Hello and welcome back to Chapter 12, Section 2 on histograms, also known as bar graphs. I will expect you to call them histograms and to know them as histograms, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that they are formally known as bar graphs, so that's what you will recognize them as. And this is going to begin on textbook page 871 and go through textbook page 874. On textbook 871, you should see the three kids. It looks like three kids, maybe two and an adult. And it says to scan the lesson, list two headings you would use to make an outline of the lesson. So the first one that you would see is that you are going to learn how to interpret data. And the second one would be to construct a histogram. That means to make a bar graph or histogram. And you're going to see throughout this section that it asks you over and over when it would be appropriate to use a histogram as opposed to another type of representation. So that's something you want to focus on as well. Under the real world link, you want to read the problem. It says, concerts. Alicia researched the average price of concert tickets. The table shows the results. So we have the average ticket prices of the top 10 money-earning concerts here. Then it says to fill in the tally column and frequency column on the frequency table. So there are two separate pieces here. The tally portion is where you're going to take the data from the raw data up here. So this is going to be considered the raw data. So it's considered the raw data because it's not organized into any particular order. It's not organized into a table. It's not in, order from least to greatest. So this is considered the raw data. You'll hear me refer to that. And you're supposed to now make the tally marks. Remember, tally marks, you're going to want to use them 1 through 4. So dash, dash, dash 4 times. And then you'll put a slash through to show the number 5. And that makes it easier for you to count them later on. So $25 to $49. As you go through here, let's see if there are any that are 25. Let's see if there are any that go 30s, no, 40s. Okay, so now we have this one, 47.22. So we're going to make a tally mark here, and then we're just going to cross through that one. And notice I'm not like blacking it out. I'm just crossing through it a little bit. So I know I've counted that one. I don't see any others that are under $50. So now we're going to go to the next portion, which is going to be $50 to $74.99. So now I have one right there. And 50, 50, 50, I've got another 59 right there, the 59, 58, so we'll make another tally mark. 51, 53, so another tally mark. So anything that's in the 50s and the 60s for sure. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's see, I think I got them all there. So now 75 to 99, we have 1, 2. So I'm going to make 2 tally marks here. Now, before I go to make my frequency portion, I'm just going to double check. I'm going to count. So I'm going to count 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 times 2 means that there should be 10 figures here. And I'm just going to double check on my numbers now. So when I write the frequency, what we're saying is how many times does this occur? So for the first one, it's only 1. For the next one, it's going to be 5, 6, 7. So we're going to write a number 7 there. And for the last one, it's going to be 2. So I'm just going to double check. 7 plus 2 is 9, plus 1 is 10. So yep, I have 10 here. So that means I have accounted for all of my numbers. Question 2 says, what does each tally mark represent? Well, each tally mark represents one concert. So you want to write that. All right, so you should have written one concert. What is one advantage of using the frequency table? So this is that question I was telling you about that they're going to ask you what the advantages are. So for this one, you can easily tell how many concerts had an average ticket price less than $50. Then question number 4 says, what is one advantage of using the first table? So the first table that they're talking about is this one up here, the raw data. So that's what they're talking about when they say first table. They're talking about this right here. So what's one advantage of using the first table? Well, if you notice, something that the frequency table doesn't have is exact prices. They've only got the ranges. So one advantage of using the first table is you can identify specific average ticket prices. So you want to make sure that you get that now for number 4. Moving on to textbook page 872, at the top of 872 it should say interpret data. So now we're going to learn how to interpret the data that we're looking at. It says data from a frequency table can be displayed as a histogram. So one thing you notice is that you do need a frequency table in order to get the information for your histogram here. It says a histogram is a type of bar graph used to display numerical data that have been organized into equal intervals. That's very, very important right there. So I put a box around it, and maybe even just a little line under it. These intervals allow you to see the frequency distribution, that's important, of the data, or how many pieces of the data are in each interval. So remember, they have to be equal intervals. That's very important. So over here to the right, they've noted because all of the intervals are equal, so once again, there's that equal, all of the bars have the same width. Intervals with a frequency of 0 have a bar height of 0. So this is important for the ones that are 0. So notice there is no bar that you can see here. There is no space between the bars. So that's another point to note. So example 1 says, refer to the histogram above. So I've put it off to the left here. Describe the histogram. So I'm going to put a little box around describe the histogram. And how many remote control airplanes cost at least $100? So just like in section 12.1, this is an explanation where you're going to describe something. So there are going to be several parts to it. So the first part says that there are 9 plus 7 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, or 20 prices. So that's important to name the total, the total data that you have. So as you can see here, I wrote the first part of your describe is going to be how many total pieces of data there are. So it's a good idea for you to start with that. And again, the numbers that we got, or the place that we got the numbers from, where it says 971, is if you look right here on the graph, you can even write this right on your graph if you'd like to. 9, 7, 1, 2, that's a 0, and then 1 again. Okay, so that's where we got that information from. And it says that there are 20 prices. So the second thing that you want to look at, or that you want to note in your description, more remote control airplanes had prices between $25 and $49.99 than any other range. So what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about the mode. So if you're going to talk about which one occurs the most, then you also want to think about talking about which one occurs the least. So the next sentence here says there were no airplanes recorded with a price between $125 and $149.99. And then lastly, we want to address the question if there is one. So for this specific problem, there was an actual question. So we're going to address that question. And it was, how many remote control airplanes cost at least $100? So that's what they've done here. It says 2 remote control airplanes had prices between $100 and $124.99, because remember that word at least means it has to be greater than $100. So, and 1 remote control airplane had a price between $150 and $174.99. So 2 plus 1 is 3. Remote control airplanes had prices that were at least $100. So your answer there would have been 3. Now, when you answer it for me, you don't necessarily need to have the 2 plus 1 equals 3. You can just break it up into 2 were in this range, 1 was in this range, so 3 total. Now it says to refer to the histogram above, how many remote control airplanes cost less than $75? So you want to look at the information in the histogram, and I'm going to just transfer the information that we wrote from before where we actually read the bars. So that's 9, that's going to be 7, 1 over there, and 2 here. All right, so now, again, the question is, how many remote control airplanes cost less than $75? So $75 right here is our mark. So everything that's this way. So the ones that are 75 do not count as less than. So now you want to look and you want to go, okay, 9 and 7, that gives me 16. So my answer here is 16 airplanes. Great, now you should be looking at construct a histogram. And remember, the word construct just means to make. Okay, so it says to construct a histogram, you can use data from a table to construct a histogram. So remember, again, this table up here at the top, what I called it before, this was our raw data. And again, it's raw data because it's not been organized into any fashion or intervals or anything like that yet. It's just the information as we were given it. Off to the right, there's an important note, and it says, it is important to choose a scale that includes all of the numbers in the data set. The intervals should organize the data to make it easy to compare. So you're going to have to pick the scales and the intervals. So you want to probably first start by looking to see what your lowest number and what your highest number is. That would be a good place to start. So off to the side, I wrote identify high and low number. So the low number we have here, it looks like is 108. So that's going to be our lowest number there. And then our highest number looks like it's going to be 382. So right there. Now we have to decide, obviously you're not going to start with 108 or end with 382. So now we know we're probably going to start with 100 and we'll probably end with 400. So that's how they got that. They rounded up to 400 and down to 100. Now we need to think about the best the best intervals. So we know we're going to go from 100 to 400, essentially. That's our little range right here. But now we need to think about what comes in between, because we want to be able to see the differences between each of the intervals. So if you only made 4 sections, you would have a bunch in between, like you'd have 9 in between 100 and 200, and you'd have another 9 in between 200 and 300. So that's why they broke it down into intervals of 50. So as you can see, they went ahead and filled out the frequency table. Now we're going to go ahead and look here, and it says to draw and label a horizontal and vertical axis, include a title. So you want to first draw and label it. So what we're talking about here are these numbers and these numbers, and then you also need to label it with the title, frequency and number of visitors, so like they've done here. Label the vertical axis to show the frequencies, and label the horizontal, it says show the intervals from the frequency tables on the horizontal axis. So you want to refer back to that, okay? It says, when is a histogram more useful than a table with individual data? Explain below. So that answer off to the side basically is that it's more visual, so you can see trends, okay, easier. So you can just add that below that right there. And now for the last step of creating your histogram or constructing your histogram, for each interval you want to draw a bar whose height is given by the frequencies. So up here you can see the bar ends right here. You have the bar ending here, here, and then across here. Notice, remember, there are no spaces in the bars, so you want to make sure that there are no spaces for your bars. So now we're looking at textbook page 874. This is the Got It, so you're going to be trying this on your own. So you want to pause the video now, and remember, the first thing you're going to do is take the raw data, which is going to be right up here, and you're going to be transferring it into the test scores, into the score, tally, and frequency, but now you have to figure out the ranges. So remember, go back to that last page, and remember that you are going to identify those high and low numbers, and then the best intervals to give you the best information. So as you can see, I've identified the low number here, which the lowest number in my data set is going to be 65, and the highest number in my data set looks like it's going to be 97. So I need to think about that for a second, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes here for the scores. So that means we're only between, so if we're thinking about 60, if we're thinking about 60 to 100 for our range, then we're only really talking about 40 points here. So 60 to 70, 80, 90, 100. So since there are 4 blocks, then that's how we're going to organize our score. Those are the intervals. So it'll be intervals of 9, it should be. So 60 to 69, and actually it basically covers 9. So let's go ahead and do that now. Actually, I stand corrected. It's intervals of 10. I always mess that up sometimes when we've got so 60 to 69 actually includes 10 numbers. So we need to set up our score as being 60 to 69, 70 to 79, 80 to 89, and 90 to 99. And again, you just want to double check and make sure that all of your data values are within that range and those intervals, and they are. And then you wanted to make the tallies. So I would do the tallies first, crossing out the numbers as I go along. So now I've recorded all my tallies. They should look like this. And then now you want to record the frequency, which is just where you count the tallies and you put the actual number for the frequency. So your table should now look like this. And now we're going to transfer that information over here to our histogram. So the first thing we want to do is make our intervals here at the bottom. And while mine are kind of messy, you can still see them there. So you want them to be equal width apart as well, because that shows that your intervals are the same. So now we're going to start to fill in our bars. So between 60 and 60, oh, I'm sorry, scratch that. Now we need to fill in the other axis over here. So we need 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And now we can actually fill in our bars. So for 60 to 69, we had 2. We got that from our frequency table. So we're just going to go ahead and fill it in up to 2. For 70 to 79, we had 5, so we're going to go all the way up past 4 and about halfway between 4 and 6. I'm trying to make my width here about the same, so I apologize if it's not. Let's see. I think I'm going to run out of some space here. All right, and then 80 to 89, let me go ahead and erase this so it can be together. Okay. 80 to 89, we had 10. So we want to go all the way up to 10 and fill that in. All right, so now your bars should look a little bit like this. So notice we can get all the way to 11 with the 90 to 99. All right, so hopefully you did well with this. Your next step is going to be to complete your homework, which will be textbook page 874, numbers 1 and 2. I do want you to do A, B. Now, the describe the histogram, you need to go back in the video notes and you need to check and see each part. You want to make sure that you've described each part of the histogram. And then you also want to answer question number 2. And last but not least, this was a little funny from my daughter Hudson. She actually made this little meme and then texted it to me, send it to me in a text, and I just thought it was hilarious because it's absolutely true for her. So I will see you next time and have a good evening.